I, 29M, came home to find my locks changed and my sister moved into my apartment. Turns out my parents had forged documents saying I was broke and moving to Seattle. Hi everyone. Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Thanks to you, we can keep sharing the most shocking family stories. Let's jump in. Initial post. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but I need to get this off my chest and maybe get some perspective on what's happening. I'm Michael, 29M, and what started as a simple family dinner conversation has spiraled into something I never could have imagined. 3 weeks ago, I was having dinner with my parents, Robert, 55M, and Patricia, 53F, and my younger sister Emily, 27F, at their house. It was supposed to be a regular Sunday dinner, something we've done monthly since I moved out after college. Emily had been complaining about her current living situation in a less-than-ideal part of town, which wasn't unusual. She tends to make impulsive decisions and then deal with the consequences later. I just don't feel safe walking to my car at night, Emily said, pushing her food around her plate. There was another break-in on my street last week. I sympathized with her, I really did. Have you looked into breaking your lease early? Sometimes landlords are understanding about safety concerns. That's when my mother dropped the bomb. Actually, Michael, we've been thinking. Your apartment would be perfect for Emily. It's in such a nice area, and really, young women need safe neighborhoods more than men do. I laughed, thinking she was joking. My apartment isn't just nice. It's in one of the most sought-after buildings in downtown, with controlled access, a doorman, and yes, excellent security. I'd worked my ass off to afford it, saving for 3 years for the deposit and first month's rent. The waiting list for units in my building was 18 months long. That's not how apartments work, Mom, I said carefully. I have a lease. Emily can't just move into my place. My father leaned forward, his expression serious. We're not saying you should move out tomorrow. But you could transfer the lease to Emily. You're a man. You can live anywhere and be fine. Emily needs this more than you do. The conversation deteriorated from there. They genuinely seemed to believe that because I was male, I should give up my home for my sister. When I firmly declined, my mother actually said, "We raised you better than to be so selfish." I left early that night, thinking that would be the end of it. Sure, there were some tense text messages over the following days, mostly from Emily saying I was being unsupportive and privileged, but I figured it would blow over like most family drama does. Then yesterday happened. I came home from work to find an envelope that had been slipped under my door, not unusual, as building management sometimes delivers notices this way. But when I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was a lease modification form from my property management company, dated 5 days ago, requesting to transfer my lease to Emily Patterson, effective next month. The signature on the bottom looked like mine, but I knew I hadn't signed anything. My hands were shaking as I read through the document. It stated that I, Michael Patterson, was experiencing unexpected financial difficulties, and that my sister would be taking over the lease to help the family through this challenging time. There was even a section noting that I had agreed to vacate the premises by the 15th of next month. I immediately called the building's management office, but they were closed for the evening. I've been up all night trying to figure out what happened. The signature looks authentic enough that someone who didn't know better might believe it was mine. But I never signed this. I never agreed to this. I'm not having financial difficulties. I make good money as a software developer and have never missed a rent payment in the 4 years I've lived here. The only people who knew about the conversation about my apartment were my parents and Emily. The thought that they might have done something like this makes me physically ill, but who else could it be? My parents have always favored Emily. She's the baby of the family, the one who could do no wrong, but this is beyond anything I thought they were capable of. I've documented everything and plan to go to the management office first thing in the morning. I'm also considering contacting a lawyer, though the thought of taking legal action against my own family makes me sick. Has anyone dealt with anything like this? How do I even begin to handle this situation? Update 1, 3 days later. I wanted to thank everyone who responded to my original post. Your advice about documenting everything and getting a lawyer immediately was spot on. I'm still in shock about what I've discovered, but I need to update you on what's happened. The morning after my post, I went straight to the management office. Jennifer, the property manager I've dealt with for years, seemed surprised to see me. Michael, I thought you'd already moved out. Your father said you'd found a job opportunity in Seattle. My stomach dropped. My father? When did you speak to my father? She pulled up her computer records, looking increasingly uncomfortable as she did. He came in with you last Tuesday. Don't you remember? You both sat right there, she pointed to the chairs across from her desk, and explained about your financial situation and needing to transfer the lease to help your family. Jennifer, I was in Boston last Tuesday for a work conference. I have plane tickets, hotel receipts, and about 30 colleagues who can verify that. I've never discussed transferring my lease with anyone. The color drained from her face. She immediately pulled up the security footage from last Tuesday. There, clear as day, was my father sitting in her office. But the person next to him, supposedly me, was wearing a baseball cap pulled low and a medical mask. In the video, this person never spoke, just nodded occasionally while my father did all the talking. He said you had laryngitis, Jennifer said weakly. That's why you couldn't speak. He had all your documents, your driver's license, recent pay stubs showing reduced income, bank statements. Those were forged, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the rage building inside me. I need copies of everything they gave you, and I need that lease transfer cancelled immediately. Jennifer was mortified and immediately compliant. She called the building's legal team while I was still there. As we went through the documents my father had provided, the scope of the deception became clear. They had created fake pay stubs showing my income had been cut by 70%. They had fabricated bank statements showing mounting debts. They had even created a fake email exchange between me and my new employer in Seattle. The person who had posed as me, I realized with a sick feeling, had to be Emily. She's about my height, and with a cap and mask, she could pass for me from a distance if no one looked too closely. The signature on the forms was too good to be anything but practiced. They must have had access to documents with my real signature to trace. That afternoon, I hired a lawyer, James Morrison, who specializes in fraud and identity theft cases. He was blunt. This is criminal fraud, identity theft, and forgery. Your family could face serious jail time. I went to the police that evening and filed a report. The detective assigned to my case, Detective Linda Chen, took my statement and said they'd be investigating immediately. She warned me that my parents and sister would likely be contacted within the next 48 hours. The calls started almost immediately after I left the police station. First my mother, crying and screaming about how I was destroying the family, and how it was just a misunderstanding. Then my father, threatening to cut me out of their will, as if I cared at this point. Then Emily, playing victim, saying I was ruining her life over an apartment. I didn't answer any of them. On my lawyer's advice, I sent a single text to a family group chat. Any further contact regarding this matter should be directed through my attorney. I will consider any direct contact as harassment and will report it accordingly. The responses were predictable. Extended family members started reaching out, having been fed some story about how I was sending my poor parents to jail over a miscommunication. My Aunt Barbara actually had the audacity to suggest I was overreacting and should handle this within the family. I responded to her with copies of the forged documents. She didn't reply. As of today, the lease transfer has been officially cancelled, and building management has put extra security measures in place, including flagging my apartment so no changes can be made without my physical presence and additional verification. They've also banned my parents and sister from the building. The police investigation is ongoing. Detective Chen told me they have enough evidence to charge all three of them with multiple felonies. I'm struggling with whether to push for maximum prosecution or try to work out some kind of plea deal. Despite everything, they're still my family, and the thought of my parents potentially going to prison is devastating. But then I remember that they literally tried to steal my home. They didn't just ask or pressure me, they committed actual crimes to take what I'd worked for and give it to Emily because they believed she deserved it more. The betrayal is almost unbearable. I've started therapy to deal with all of this. My therapist says that what I'm experiencing is a form of grief. I'm mourning the family I thought I had. I think she's right. I'll update again when there are more developments. For now, I'm focusing on work and trying to rebuild my sense of security. It's strange how something like this can make you question everything about your life and relationships. Update 2, 2 weeks later. The last 2 weeks have been a whirlwind of legal proceedings and family drama that's exceeded even my worst expectations. I need to update you all on what's happened because it's taken some truly incredible turns. First, the legal situation. My parents and Emily were formally charged last week with fraud, identity theft, forgery, and conspiracy. The arraignment was surreal. Seeing them in court, my mother crying, my father's face red with anger, Emily looking defiant even as the charges were read. They pleaded not guilty, which their lawyer had told me to expect. Here's where things got interesting. After the arraignment, their lawyer, David Thompson, reached out to mine. They wanted to discuss a plea deal. The offer? They would plead guilty to lesser charges, receive probation and community service, and in exchange, they wanted me to agree to transfer the lease to Emily anyway. Yes, you read that right. After being arrested for trying to steal my apartment, they wanted to use the legal system to still get my apartment. James, my lawyer, actually laughed when he told me about it. In 30 years of practice, I've never seen anything quite this audacious, he said. We obviously declined. But the story doesn't end there. 2 days after we rejected their plea deal, I came home from work to find my locks had been changed. There was a note on my door from new tenant, saying that I needed to collect my belongings from building management. I immediately called Jennifer at the management office. She was confused. They hadn't authorized any lock changes. Security footage showed Emily using what appeared to be a copied key fob to enter the building at 2 p.m., accompanied by a locksmith. She had told him she was the resident and had lost her keys. The police were called immediately. Emily was arrested at her current apartment that evening and charged with breaking and entering, criminal trespass, and violation of her bail conditions. The judge revoked her bail, and she's been in custody since. The locksmith, fortunately, was completely cooperative with police. He'd had no idea anything was wrong. Emily had shown him a utility bill with her name and my apartment's address, another forgery, as it turned out. He changed my locks back at no charge and was genuinely apologetic. But wait, there's more. My parents, apparently deciding that subtlety was overrated, started a campaign to turn the extended family against me. They created a Facebook group called Justice for Emily, where they painted me as a cruel, privileged son who was letting his sister live in danger while I lived in luxury. They shared photos of Emily's current apartment building, which, for the record, is in a perfectly safe area, just not as upscale as mine, alongside photos of my building that they'd pulled from the realtor's website. The narrative they spun was creative, I'll give them that. According to them, I had promised Emily she could have my apartment when I got promoted, never happened, and they were just trying to hold me to my word when I selfishly backed out. They claimed the documents weren't forged but were prepared in anticipation of my agreement. Several family members initially bought into this, but the tide turned when I posted my response. I shared the actual police reports, the security footage of my father and Emily at the management office while I was provably in Boston, and the forensic document examiner's report showing the forgeries. I ended with a simple statement: I have never, at any time, agreed to give up my apartment. They committed crimes to try to take it from me. The Facebook group was deleted within hours. My uncle Christopher, my father's brother, reached out to me privately after seeing everything. He told me this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Apparently, 15 years ago, my parents had tried to pressure my grandfather into changing his will to favor Emily over all the other grandchildren. When he refused, they had attempted to have him declared mentally incompetent. The family had hushed it up, and my grandfather had never pressed charges, but he changed his will to explicitly exclude my parents from any inheritance. I had no idea about any of this. It certainly explained why my grandfather had always seemed distant with my parents but warm with me. The prosecution has been very interested in this pattern of behavior. They've indicated they'll be seeking jail time, not just probation. My parents' lawyer has hinted they want to make another deal, but honestly, I'm done negotiating with people who see my life and possessions as things they're entitled to redistribute. The stress of all this has been overwhelming. I've had to take some time off work, and I've been staying with my friend Thomas just to get away from the apartment for a bit. Even though the locks have been changed and security has been increased, I don't feel safe there right now. The violation of having Emily break in, even if she couldn't get into the actual apartment, has left me feeling exposed. On a positive note, my employer has been incredibly supportive. When I explained the situation to HR, in case my parents tried to contact my workplace, they immediately put security measures in place and offered me additional paid leave if needed. My colleagues have been amazing too. Several have offered to be witnesses if needed, confirming I was in Boston when the fraud occurred. I've also been overwhelmed by the support from friends I didn't even know cared that much. People I haven't spoken to in years have reached out after hearing about the situation, offering everything from legal advice to a place to stay to just a listening ear. Update 3, 6 weeks later. This will likely be my final update on the situation, as things have largely been resolved legally, though the family fallout continues. I wanted to share how everything concluded and what my life looks like now. First, the legal resolution. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the possibility of significant jail time, my parents and Emily finally accepted a plea deal. They each pleaded guilty to fraud and identity theft. My parents received 2 years probation, 500 hours of community service each, and were ordered to pay restitution for my legal fees and the therapy costs I've incurred. Emily, because of the break-in violation of her bail, received 6 months in jail, with credit for time served, followed by 3 years probation. The judge, during sentencing, made a statement that stuck with me. She said, "The defendants seem to believe that family relationships entitle them to take what isn't theirs. This court strongly disagrees. Being family does not exempt you from the law, nor does it give you the right to violate the trust, property, and peace of mind of your relatives. Emily broke down crying when the sentence was read. My parents sat in stunned silence. I felt nothing. Just a hollow emptiness where my family used to be. The aftermath has been interesting. My extended family has largely split into two camps. Some, like my Uncle Christopher and Aunt Margaret, have been supportive of me. They've shared more stories about my parents' past behavior that I never knew about, attempts to manipulate inheritances, lies told to get family members to loan money that was never repaid, always with Emily as the ultimate beneficiary. The other camp, mostly my mother's side, thinks I should have kept it in the family and handled it without involving the police. My Aunt Barbara sent me a particularly nasty message about how I've destroyed the family and ruined Emily's future. I blocked her and most of that side of the family. The one relative who surprised me was my grandmother on my mother's side, Susan. She called me last week and said, "I'm ashamed of what Patricia did, but I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. I've watched her enable Emily's entitlement for years, and I should have said something sooner." She's invited me to lunch next week, and I think I'll go. As for my living situation, I'm still in my apartment. The building management has been incredibly apologetic about the whole situation and actually reduced my rent for the next year as a gesture of goodwill, and probably to avoid any potential lawsuit. They've also implemented new security measures, including requiring photo ID and in-person verification for any lease modifications. I've slowly started feeling safe in my home again. I installed my own security system and cameras, which helps with peace of mind. My therapist has been invaluable in working through the trauma and betrayal. She's helped me understand that what my parents did wasn't just about an apartment. It was about a fundamental lack of respect for me as an independent adult. Work has been my salvation through all of this. I threw myself into a new project, and ironically, the focus and dedication I needed to cope with the stress led to me exceeding all my targets. I received a promotion and a substantial raise last month. The bitter irony isn't lost on me. My parents claimed I was having financial difficulties, and now I'm making more money than ever. I've also grown closer to friends who showed up for me during this ordeal. Thomas, who let me stay with him when I felt unsafe, has become like a brother to me, the family I chose rather than the one I was born into. We've actually started looking at investment properties together, thinking about buying a duplex where we could each have our own space but also have that security of having someone trustworthy nearby. The hardest part has been the silence. I haven't spoken to my parents or Emily since that day in court. They've respected the no-contact order, though I know from mutual acquaintances that they're telling everyone who will listen that I'm a heartless son who chose property over family. What they don't understand, or refuse to acknowledge, is that they chose crime over family. They chose entitlement over respect. They chose to try to take what wasn't theirs instead of helping Emily find her own solution. I've heard through the grapevine that Emily is struggling with the consequences of having a criminal record. She lost her job when she was arrested, and finding new employment with fraud and identity theft convictions is proving difficult. Part of me feels bad for her, but then I remember her walking into my building with a locksmith, trying to steal my home, and any sympathy evaporates. My parents, meanwhile, are apparently in therapy themselves, court-ordered as part of their probation. I hope it helps them, I really do. Not because I ever want a relationship with them again, but because maybe they can avoid destroying their relationships with other family members the way they destroyed ours. People ask me if I regret involving the police, if I wish I'd handled it differently. The answer is no. They didn't just cross a line, they obliterated it. They committed serious crimes and expected me to roll over and accept it because we share DNA. They needed to face consequences, legal ones, to understand that their behavior was not just morally wrong but criminally wrong. This whole experience has taught me valuable lessons about boundaries, self-respect, and the difference between family and relatives. Family shows up for you, respects you, and would never dream of stealing from you. Relatives just happen to share your genetic material. I've lost relatives, but I've strengthened my real family, the people who stood by me through this nightmare. I'm in a good place now. My apartment feels like home again. My career is thriving. I have a support system of people who actually care about me, not what they can take from me. The therapy continues, but it's less about crisis management now and more about building healthy patterns for the future. To anyone reading this who's dealing with toxic family members, you don't owe anyone access to your life or your possessions just because you're related. It's okay to protect yourself, even if that means legal action. It's okay to choose your own well-being over maintaining a facade of family harmony. And it's definitely okay to press charges when crimes are committed against you, regardless of who commits them. Thank you to everyone who offered advice and support throughout this ordeal. Your messages helped more than you know during some very dark moments. I'm closing this chapter of my life now and looking forward to a future free from the toxic dynamics that nearly cost me my home and my sanity. Final reflection. It's been 3 months since everything concluded, and I wanted to add one final thought. Last week, I was having dinner with Thomas and some other friends when one of them asked if I missed my family. I realized that what I missed wasn't my actual family, it was the idea of them. The family I thought I had, the one that would never betray me like this, never existed. It was a construct I'd built in my mind, ignoring all the red flags over the years. The real family, the one that tried to steal my home, that committed fraud and forgery, that broke into my building, I don't miss them at all. How could I? They showed me who they really were, and I believe them. I'm at peace with my decision. My home is my sanctuary again, earned through my own hard work and protected through my own strength. And that's more valuable than any toxic relationship, blood-related or not. The family we choose is often stronger than the family we're born into. I'm grateful for the people who proved that to me when I needed it most.